The locker room echoed with loud laughter and crude jokes. 5 men sat on the metal benches, their military uniforms half-dressed, boots unlaced. They had just finished their morning drills at the base. And as usual, they were talking about women, I'm telling you. "This new commander they're bringing in is going to be a joke," Marcus said, slapping his knee. He was the loudest of the group, always first to make a comment. His face was red from laughing too hard. "Yeah, I heard it's some woman," Derek added, shaking his head. "What does she know about real combat? Probably got promoted because of some diversity program." The others nodded and chuckled. These men had been in the military for years. They had seen action, completed dangerous missions, and earned their ranks through blood and sweat. The idea that their new commanding officer would be a woman seemed ridiculous to them. "I bet she'd cry the first time we go out on a real mission," Tony said, wrapping tape around his knuckles. "They belong in administrative roles, not leading soldiers." James, the oldest of the group at 38, leaned back against his locker. "Remember that female officer we had 2 years ago? She couldn't even handle a simple training exercise without calling for backup. This is going to be the same thing." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "And we're supposed to follow her orders? Risk our lives based on what she says? No thanks. I'll do what I need to do to survive, but I'm not taking her seriously." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. They joked about how they would have to go easy during training so she could keep up. They laughed about having to watch their language around her. Not one of them had met her. Not one of them knew anything about her background or experience. But in their minds, they had already decided who she was and what she was capable of. A woman could not lead them. A woman could not understand the weight of command. A woman could not earn their respect. "When does she arrive?" Derek asked, pulling on his boots. "Tomorrow morning," James replied. "Oh, 800 hours. We're supposed to assemble in the briefing room." "Great," Tony muttered. "Just great. There goes our efficiency." Marcus stood up and stretched. "Well, boys, enjoy these last few hours of having a competent leadership. Tomorrow, everything changes, and not for the better." They all laughed again, the sound bouncing off the concrete walls. They felt confident in their assessment. They had been doing this job for years. What could some woman possibly teach them? As they filed out of the locker room, none of them noticed the young recruit standing near the showers. Private David Chen had been listening to everything. He was new to the base, only 3 months into his service. The conversation made him uncomfortable, but he was too junior to say anything. These were experienced soldiers. Surely they knew what they were talking about. David had grown up with strong women in his family. His mother had raised 4 children alone after his father passed away. His older sister was a surgeon. He had always been taught to respect people based on their abilities, not their gender. But here in the military, things seemed different. The culture was different, and he was still trying to find his place. That evening, the base was quiet. Most soldiers had retired to their quarters or were in the mess hall. The 5 men from the locker room sat together at dinner, still making jokes about their new commander. "I heard she's never even been deployed overseas," Derek said between bites of food. "How can she lead us if she's never seen real combat?" "Probably spent her whole career behind a desk," Tony added, "filling out paperwork and attending meetings." But their information was wrong, completely wrong. If they had bothered to check her file, if they had asked anyone in command, they would have learned the truth. But they were too busy assuming. Too confident in their prejudices to seek facts. Captain Sarah Mitchell was not what they imagined. At 34 years old, she had more combat experience than all 5 of them combined. She had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and 1 classified mission in Syria. She had led a special operations team through some of the most dangerous territories in the world. She had been awarded the Silver Star for Valor, the Bronze Star with a V device for heroism, and the Purple Heart after being wounded in action. She had joined the military at 18, right out of high school. While other girls her age were going to college parties, Sarah was doing push-ups at 4 in the morning and learning how to disassemble a rifle in under a minute. She had graduated top of her class in officer training school. She had earned every promotion, every commendation, every bit of respect from those who had actually served with her. But Marcus, Derek, Tony, James, and the others didn't know any of this. They didn't care to know. They had already made up their minds. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Clouds hung low over the base, threatening rain. At 0730 hours, soldiers began filing into the briefing room. The 5 men walked in together, still joking quietly among themselves. "Remember, don't laugh when she walks in," Marcus whispered. "Try to keep a straight face." The room filled up quickly. About 40 soldiers were present, all waiting to meet their new commander. The energy in the room was mixed. Some soldiers were curious, some were skeptical, and some, like Private Chen, were simply waiting to form their own opinions based on what they saw. At exactly 0800 hours, the side door opened. He was a stern man in his 50s with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Behind him walked Captain Sarah Mitchell. The room fell silent. Sarah was of average height, around 5'7", with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore her uniform with precision, every crease perfect, every metal in place. Her boots were polished to a mirror shine. Her posture was straight, her expression calm and professional. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look uncertain. She looked like exactly what she was, a soldier who had earned her place. Marcus felt his smile fade slightly. This wasn't what he expected. She looked serious, composed, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. But he pushed the thought away. Looks could be deceiving. Colonel Peters stepped up to the podium. "Good morning, soldiers." Captain Mitchell comes to us with extensive combat experience and an exceptional service record. She will be leading all field operations moving forward. I expect each of you to give her the same respect and cooperation you would give any commanding officer. Captain Mitchell, the floor is yours. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. She made brief eye contact with several soldiers, including the 5 men sitting in the 3rd row. Her gaze was steady, unflinching. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I'm Captain Mitchell. Over the next few weeks, I'll be working with each of you to assess our operational readiness and team cohesion. I've reviewed your training records, and I'm impressed with what I've seen. This unit has potential." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But potential isn't enough. We're going to train harder, think smarter, and work together more effectively than ever before. I don't care about your background, your connections, or how long you've been in service. What matters to me is your performance, your dedication, and your willingness to be part of a team." The motivational speech. Sarah's eyes snapped at Derek. The movement was so quick, so precise, that it made several soldiers sit up straighter. "You have something to share with the group, soldier?" Derek's face went pale. "No, man. Because when I'm speaking, you're listening. That's how this works. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Derek replied, his voice much quieter now. Sarah continued her briefing, outlining her expectations and the training schedule for the coming weeks. She spoke with authority, but without arrogance. She was firm, but not cruel. Everything about her demeanor suggested someone who knew her job inside and out. When the briefing ended, soldiers filed out of the room. The 5 men walked together in silence, their earlier confidence shaken, but not completely gone. "Okay, so she can give a speech," Tony said once they were outside. "That doesn't mean she can lead in the field." "Exactly," Marcus agreed, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "Talk is cheap. Let's see what happens when things get real." But doubt had begun to creep in. Just a little. Just enough to make them wonder if maybe, possibly, they had been wrong. The first week under Captain Mitchell's command was brutal. She pushed them harder than any commander they had worked with before. Morning drills started 30 minutes earlier. Physical training lasted longer. Tactical exercises were more complex and demanding. Marcus found himself struggling to keep up during a 10-mile run with full gear. His lungs burned, his legs ached, and sweat poured down his face. Captain Mitchell ran alongside the unit, not behind them or in a vehicle, but right there with them. She wasn't even breathing hard. "Pick up the pace," she called out. "We're moving too slow." In a combat situation, slow gets you killed. When they finally finished, several soldiers collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Marcus was among them. He looked up and saw Captain Mitchell standing with her hands on her hips, barely winded. 5-minute break. Then we move to weapons training, she announced. "She's trying to kill us." But Private Chen, who was in better shape than most of the veterans, seemed energized. He had noticed something the others hadn't. Captain Mitchell wasn't just pushing them for no reason. Every exercise had a purpose. Every drill connected to real combat scenarios. She was actually teaching them, making them better, even if they were too stubborn to see it. The weapons training revealed even more. Captain Mitchell didn't just tell them what to do. She demonstrated. She picked up an assault rifle and disassembled it in 12 seconds, then reassembled it in 15. Her movements were fluid, practiced, automatic. "This weapon is your lifeline," she said, holding up the rifle. "You should be able to take it apart and put it together in your sleep. During combat, equipment fails. Mechanisms jam. Sand, mud, water, all of it can cause problems. If you can't fix your weapon quickly, you're useless to your team." She walked along the line of soldiers. "Johnson, show me." Private Johnson stepped forward nervously. He was competent, but slow. It took him 45 seconds to disassemble the weapon. "Not bad, but not good enough," Sarah said without emotion. "Practice until you can do it in 20 seconds. Next, Williams." One by one, she tested them. Some were fast, some were slow. She gave specific feedback to each person, pointing out exactly what they needed to improve. She wasn't mean about it, but she wasn't soft either. She simply stated facts and expected improvement. When she got to Marcus, he felt his stomach tighten. He wanted to impress her, to prove he was capable, even though part of him still resented taking orders from a woman. He fumbled slightly with one of the components, and it cost him precious seconds. 38 seconds, Sarah said, her eyes meeting his. "You're better than that, Thompson. I've seen your file." "What's different today?" Marcus felt his face flush. "Nothing, ma'am. I'll do better." "See that you do," she replied, then moved on to the next soldier. The comment stuck with him. She had actually looked at his file. She knew his capabilities. She wasn't dismissing him or any of them. She was holding them to the standards she knew they could meet. That afternoon, they had tactical scenario training. Captain Mitchell divided them into 2 teams for a mock combat exercise. One team would defend a position, while the other team attempted to breach it. Standard training that they had done dozens of times before. But Captain Mitchell added a twist. Team Alpha will have 3 fewer members than Team Bravo. Team Bravo will also have better positioning. Team Alpha, you're at a disadvantage. Your job is to figure out how to win anyway. Marcus was assigned to Team Alpha, the disadvantaged team. He immediately felt frustrated. This seemed unfair, designed to make them fail. Captain Mitchell seemed to read his mind. "Combat is never fair, Thompson. The enemy doesn't give you equal numbers or ideal conditions. You work with what you have, and you find a way to win. Begin in 5 minutes." Team Alpha huddled together. They had to come up with a strategy quickly. James, being the oldest, naturally started giving orders. "We'll do a frontal assault, overwhelming force, push through their defense." "That won't work," Private Chen said quietly. "We're outnumbered." "A frontal assault will fail, what do you know?" James snapped. "You've been here 3 months?" "That's right," Derek admitted reluctantly. "We need a different approach." Marcus looked at the terrain. There was a ridge to the left, covered with rocks and sparse vegetation. It wasn't great cover, but it was something. What if we split up? They debated for another minute, then agreed on the plan. The exercise began. Team Bravo, confident in their superior numbers, held their position and waited. Instead, two members of Team Alpha made noise on the right side, drawing attention and fire. Meanwhile, Marcus led the other 4 team members along the ridge. They moved slowly, carefully, using every bit of cover available. It was exhausting, crawling over rocks, keeping low, staying quiet. But it worked. They managed to get behind Team Bravo's position. From there, it was a quick firefight using training rounds. And Team Alpha eliminated most of Team Bravo before they could react. When the exercise ended, Captain Mitchell called everyone together. Team Alpha wins. Well executed. She turned to Marcus. Thompson, walk me through your strategy. Marcus explained their approach, how they used misdirection and terrain to overcome their numerical disadvantage. As he spoke, he realized something. He had actually enjoyed the challenge. It had forced him to think differently, to be creative instead of relying on brute force. Good tactical thinking, Sarah said when he finished. That's exactly the kind of adaptability you need in real combat. Team Bravo, what did you learn? The leader of Team Bravo, a soldier named Peterson, spoke up. We got complacent. We assumed they'd come straight at us because that's what usually happens in these drills. We didn't scout our flanks or consider alternative approaches. Correct, Sarah confirmed. Never assume anything. Never get comfortable. The moment you think you know what's happening is the moment you're most vulnerable. She looked around at all of them. You all did well today. I'm seeing improvement, but we still have a long way to go. For the next 2 weeks, the pattern continued. Intensive training, complex scenarios, constant challenges. Captain Mitchell was always there, always pushing, always teaching. Slowly, grudgingly, the men began to respect her. Tony was the first to openly admit it. One evening in the mess hall, he said to the others, "You know, she's actually pretty good. That urban combat drill yesterday? I learned more in 2 hours than I did in 6 months with our last commander." James nodded. She knows her stuff. I'll give her that. And she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. She does everything she asks us to do. Derek remained quiet, still uncomfortable with admitting he had been wrong. The unit was sharper, faster, more cohesive than before. Marcus was having the hardest time adjusting his thinking. His ego had taken a beating. He had prided himself on being a top soldier, but Captain Mitchell had exposed weaknesses he didn't know he had. She pushed him to be better, and while part of him appreciated it, another part of him resented the fact that a woman was the one doing it. Private Chen watched these interactions with interest. He saw the veterans struggling with their preconceptions, wrestling with the evidence in front of them. He also saw Captain Mitchell handle it all with professionalism and patience. She never gloated, never rubbed their faces in their initial disrespect. She simply did her job and expected them to do theirs. 3 weeks into her command, an opportunity arose that would change everything. The base received intelligence about a potential threat in a nearby region. A terrorist cell was suspected of planning an attack on a supply convoy. Command needed a team to investigate, assess the situation, and neutralize the threat if necessary. This would be a real mission, not a training exercise. Danger would be real. Consequences would be real. And Captain Mitchell would be leading them. When the briefing was announced, the 5 men felt a mixture of emotions. This was what they had been waiting for. The real test. Would Captain Mitchell hold up under actual combat conditions? Or would she crack under pressure like they had originally predicted? The briefing room was tense when they assembled that evening. Captain Mitchell stood at the front with several maps and intelligence reports spread across the table. Colonel Peters was present as well, along with 2 intelligence officers. "Listen up," Sarah began, her voice steady. "We have credible intelligence that a terrorist cell is planning to attack supply convoy Delta 7 tomorrow afternoon. The convoy will be transporting medical supplies and equipment to a forward operating base. We cannot allow these supplies to be lost or delayed." She pointed to a map showing the convoy route. "The most likely attack point is here, at this mountain pass. It's a natural choke point. Limited visibility, difficult terrain, easy to set up an ambush. Our mission is to secure the pass before the convoy arrives. We'll insert here," she indicated a point on the map, "and move on foot to establish defensive positions. If the terrorist cell is present, we engage and neutralize. If they're not there, we provide overwatch for the convoy as it passes through. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each soldier. This is a high-risk operation. The terrain favors defenders, which means if the enemy is already in position, we'll be at a disadvantage. We'll need to be smart, careful, and work as a coordinated unit. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. This was it. This was what all the training had been for. Thompson, Drake, Williams, Chen, and Rodriguez, Sarah continued. You five will form the advance team with me. We'll move ahead of the main group to scout and identify enemy positions. The rest of the unit will follow with heavy weapon support. She spent the next hour going over every detail of the mission. Routes, communication protocols, contingency plans, extraction procedures. Nothing was left to chance. Her planning was meticulous, thorough, professional. When the briefing ended, Colonel Peters stood up. Captain Mitchell, you have operational command. Use your judgment. Bring everyone home safe.
Yes, sir.
Sarah replied with a crisp salute. As soldiers filed out of the briefing room, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected. He felt confident. Not in himself alone, but in the team, in the plan, and yes, in Captain Mitchell's leadership. She had prepared them well. The helicopter blades cut through the early morning darkness, creating a rhythmic thumping sound that vibrated through the cabin. Marcus sat strapped in next to Derek, both men checking their equipment for the third time. Across from them, Captain Mitchell sat calmly, her eyes closed, breathing steady. It seemed impossible given what they were about to do. Private Chen clutched his rifle tightly, his knuckles white. This was his first real combat mission. Tony noticed and leaned over, shouting above the helicopter noise, Stay close, keep your head down, and follow orders. You'll be fine, Chen nodded, grateful for the reassurance. James, sitting near the door, stared out into the darkness. He had been on dozens of missions before, but each one still made his stomach tight with anticipation. This time felt different, though. This time he trusted his commander completely. The helicopter began its descent. Captain Mitchell opened her eyes and pressed her communication device. 2 minutes to landing zone. Check weapons, confirm your buddy, and remember the plan. We move fast. We move quiet. We secure the position. Yes, ma'am, came the unified response. The helicopter touched down in a clearing about 3 miles from the mountain pass. The moment the doors opened, soldiers poured out, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The night air was cold and smelled of pine and earth. Mountains loomed in the distance, dark shapes against the slightly lighter sky. Captain Mitchell was first out, moving with purpose toward the tree line. Alpha team, on me. Bravo team, establish perimeter. We move in 30 seconds. The advance team formed up quickly. Marcus, Derek, Tony, James, Chen, and Captain Mitchell. 6 soldiers against unknown odds, moving through hostile territory in near total darkness. Their night vision goggles turned the world into shades of green dot. They moved in a tactical column. Maintaining spacing, weapons pointed outward. Captain Mitchell led from the front, setting a quick but sustainable pace. Every few minutes, she would raise her fist, signaling everyone to stop and listen. Then they would move again. After 40 minutes of careful movement, they reached a ridge overlooking the mountain pass. Captain Mitchell dropped to a prone position, pulling out binoculars. The others spread out along the ridge, maintaining cover behind rocks and vegetation. Marcus crawled up beside her. Do you see anything, ma'am? Sarah scanned the pass methodically, section by section. Movement on the far side, 3 o'clock position. Looks like 2 individuals setting up something near those boulders. She handed him the binoculars. What do you think? Marcus looked through the binoculars, focusing where she indicated. 2 figures were indeed moving around, partially concealed by large rocks. They appeared to be placing something on the ground. Could be an eyed, Marcus said quietly. The positioning is perfect for an ambush. She activated her radio. Overwatch. This is Alpha 1. We have confirmed hostile activity in the target zone. At least 2 individuals, possibly more. Appears to be IE displacement in progress. Copy that, Alpha 1, came the response from Base Command. Rules of engagement are active. You are cleared to neutralize the threat. Sarah looked at her team. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. This was the moment that would define everything. How she handled the next few minutes would either validate all her training and experience, or it would end in disaster. Here's the situation, she said quietly, gathering them close. We have confirmed hostiles setting up an attack on the convoy route. We need to neutralize them before they complete their setup and before any convoy arrives. The terrain gives them advantage if we go straight down. So we won't do that. She pulled out a small tablet showing a topographical map of the area. Thompson, Rodriguez, you two will work your way around to the east, using that ravine for cover. It'll take you about 20 minutes. Once you're in position, you'll have a clear angle on their flank. This was similar to the training scenario from weeks ago. Use terrain, use surprise. Don't take the obvious approach. Williams, Chen, you're with me? We're going to create a diversion from this position. Not a full attack, just enough to draw their attention and make them think we're the main threat. When Thompson and Rodriguez engage from the flank, we hit them from here simultaneously. What about me? Derek asked. You stay here with the radio and maintain communication with Bravo team. If things go wrong, you guide them in. You're our backup and our lifeline. Derek wanted to be in the action, but he understood the importance of the role. Yes, ma'am. Captain Mitchell checked her watch. Thompson, Rodriguez, move out now. Everyone else, we wait for their signal. Weapons tight until I give the command. Marcus and James began working their way down the ridge and into the ravine. The terrain was rough, filled with loose rocks and thorny bushes. They moved as quietly as possible. Knowing that one wrong sound could alert the enemy, it took them 25 minutes instead of 20. The ravine was deeper and more difficult than it appeared from above. But eventually, they reached the position Captain Mitchell had identified. From here, they had a clear view of the hostile forces. Marcus counted 5 individuals now, not just 2. All were armed, and they had indeed placed what looked like improvised explosive devices along the road. Alpha 1, this is Thompson. In position? Confirming 5 hostiles, multiple IEDs placed. Copy that, Thompson. Sarah's voice came through his earpiece. Stand by for my mark. Okay. On the ridge, Captain Mitchell studied the scene below. 5 hostiles was more than intelligence had suggested. That changed the math. But her team was well-trained, well-positioned, and had the element of surprise. She felt confident but not reckless. Williams, Chen, on my signal, we put suppressing fire on the 2 individuals near the large boulder. Controlled bursts, not wild shooting. We want to pin them down, not waste ammunition. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Both soldiers responded. Sarah raised her weapon, sighting carefully. Thompson, Rodriguez, prepare to engage the 3 on the east side. Ready, came Marcus's voice. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute. The night erupted with gunfire. Captain Mitchell's first shots were precise, hitting near the boulder and forcing the 2 hostiles to take cover. Tony and Chen added their fire, creating a sustained suppression that kept the enemy pinned. From the flank, Marcus and James opened up on the 3 hostiles near the road. Caught completely by surprise, 2 of them went down immediately. The third managed to dive behind a vehicle, turning fire wildly. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. The air filled with the crack of rifles, the whine of bullets ricocheting off rocks, and shouted commands. Captain Mitchell's voice remained calm throughout, directing fire, calling out positions, keeping her team coordinated. Thompson, the one behind the vehicle, is trying to reach the detonator. Take him out now. Marcus adjusted his aim, waiting for a clear shot. When the hostile shifted position slightly, Marcus fired twice. The man dropped. The 2 remaining hostiles near the boulder realized they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. One tried to run and was taken down by Chun's accurate fire. The last one threw down his weapon and raised his hands. Cease fire, Captain Mitchell commanded. Cease fire. Thompson, secure the prisoner. Everyone else, stay alert. The team moved quickly, professionally. Marcus and James secured the prisoner while Tony and Wall Chen checked the downed hostiles for any signs of life and additional weapons. Captain Mitchell coordinated with Derek to bring up Bravo team for explosive ordnance disposal. Within 15 minutes, the area was secure. The explosive disposal team carefully disarmed the IEDs. The prisoner was restrained and would be transported back for questioning. Medical personnel checked the team for injuries, but miraculously, no one was hurt. Colonel Peters arrived by helicopter 30 minutes later to personally assess the situation. He walked through the scene with Captain Mitchell, examining the positions, the IEDs, and listening to her after-action report. Your tactical decisions were sound, your execution was flawless, and you brought everyone home safe. This is exactly the kind of leadership we need. Sarah nodded professionally. Thank you, sir. The team performed excellently. They've trained hard, and it showed. As the team prepared to extract, Marcus found himself standing near Captain Mitchell. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a strange sense of clarity. Ma'am, that was incredible, he said. The way you positioned us, the way you stayed calm, everything. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've never seen better leadership. Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, he saw her smile slightly. You made it easy, Thompson. You and the others executed the plan perfectly. That's what good soldiers do. I need to apologize, Marcus continued, the words coming out before he could stop them. That first day, before you arrived, we were in the locker room. We said things, made assumptions about you. We were wrong. Completely wrong. I'm sorry. Captain Mitchell was quiet for a moment. I know what you said. I've heard it all before at every assignment. People see my gender before they see my rank or my experience. It's exhausting, but I don't let it define me or limit me.
You knew?
Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment. He was uncomfortable with the conversation and thought I should know what I was walking into. I appreciate your apology, but what matters more is that you learned something. You learned that competence has no gender. Leadership has no gender. Courage has no gender. I did learn that, Marcus admitted. We all did. Derek, Tony, and James had walked up during the conversation. They had heard enough to understand what was being discussed. James, the oldest of the group, spoke up. Ma'am, I've served under a lot of commanders. Good ones, bad ones, and everything in between. You're in the top 3, Isaly. Maybe number 1. And that has nothing to do with you being a woman or a man. It's because you're an exceptional soldier and leader. I second that, Tony added. I would follow you anywhere, ma'am. I trust you with my life. Derek nodded his agreement. Same here. You've proven yourself beyond any doubt. Private Chen stood nearby, quietly pleased. He had respected Captain Mitchell from the beginning, not because he wanted to be different from the others, but because he had been raised to judge people by their actions. Now everyone else saw what he had seen all along. Captain Mitchell looked at all of them, these men who had doubted her, mocked her, and now respected her. I don't need your praise, but I'll accept your respect. That's all I've ever asked for. Treat me like you would any other competent officer. Hold me to high standards, and I'll hold you to the same. That's how we become better together. The helicopter ride back to base was quiet. Everyone was processing what had happened. They had gone into combat, successfully completed a dangerous mission, and perhaps most importantly, they had learned something about themselves and their own biases. When they landed, word had already spread about the successful mission. Soldiers from other units came out to congratulate them. There were handshakes, pats on the back, and a sense of shared pride. 6 months had passed since that night mission in the mountain pass. The base had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The training schedules remained intense under Captain Mitchell's command. But now every soldier understood the purpose behind the difficulty. They weren't being pushed to break them down. They were being pushed to build them up. Marcus sat in the same locker room where it all began, lacing up his boots. The irony wasn't lost on him. This was the exact spot where he had laughed about their new commander, where he had made jokes and assumptions that now made him cringe with shame. Derek walked in. Followed by Tony and James, they had just finished a training exercise with a group of new recruits. Captain Mitchell had assigned them to help train the younger soldiers, a responsibility they took seriously. "Those kids are green," Tony said, shaking his head. "Did you see how Johnson handled his weapon? Took him almost a full minute to clear a jam." "He'll learn," Marcus replied. "Remember when Mitchell first tested us on weapons proficiency? We weren't as sharp as we thought we were." James sat down on the bench with a grunt. His knees weren't what they used to be, but he refused to slow down. "You know what's interesting? I heard some of the new recruits talking yesterday. They were excited about training under Captain Mitchell. Apparently, she's developing a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" Derek asked.
"A good kind,"
James said. "Tough but fair. Excellent tactician. Leads from the front. The kind of commander people want to serve under." It was true. Word had spread throughout the military about Captain Mitchell's leadership. Other commanders were studying her training methods. Officers were requesting transfers to serve under her command. She had become exactly what she had always been. But now, people were paying attention. Private Chen, now Corporal Chen, after earning a promotion, walked into the locker room. 6 months of intensive training had transformed him from a nervous recruit into a confident soldier. "Captain Mitchell wants to see us in her office in 20 minutes, he announced. "All of us?" Marcus asked. "Just the original team from that first mission? You, Derek, Tony, James, Rodriguez, and me." They exchanged glances. A meeting with the commander wasn't unusual, but the specific selection of people was interesting. 20 minutes later, they assembled outside Captain Mitchell's office. The door was open, and they could see her sitting at her desk, reviewing documents. Her office was neat and organized, with several commendations framed on the wall alongside photos from various missions. "Come in," she called without looking up. They filed in and stood at attention. Sarah finished reading the document in front of her, signed it, then looked up at them. At ease, closed the door. Marcus closed the door, wondering what was coming. Had they done something wrong? Was someone being reassigned? Sarah stood up and walked around her desk, leaning against it casually. This was unusual. She was normally very formal during duty hours. "I called you here because I received some news today, and I wanted you to hear it from me first." A knot formed in Marcus's stomach. Was she leaving? "Command has approved a new special operations unit," Sarah continued. "This unit will handle higher-risk missions that require a small, highly skilled team. They've offered me command of this unit." There it was. She was leaving. After everything they had been through, after all the training and growth, she was being reassigned. Marcus felt disappointed, though he tried not to show it. "I've accepted the position," Sarah said, watching their reactions. "But here's the thing. I get to choose my team. I can select up to 10 soldiers to form the core of this unit, and I want you 6 to be part of it." Silence filled the room as her words sank in. This wasn't a goodbye. This was an invitation. Derek spoke first. "You want us? After everything?" Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Especially after everything. You 6 have shown incredible growth over the past 6 months. You've become better soldiers, better teammates, and more importantly, you've proven you can learn and adapt. That's exactly what I need for this unit." "What kind of missions are we talking about?" James asked. "The classified missions. Higher-risk operations that regular units can't handle. Hostage rescue, counterterrorism, intelligence gathering in hostile territory. The kind of work that requires absolute trust between team members." She paused. "I won't lie to you. This will be more dangerous than anything you've done before. The training will be even more intense. You'll be away from the base for long periods, and you might not be able to tell your families what you're doing." Tony crossed his arms, thinking, "When do we need to decide?" "You have 48 hours, Sarah replied. "This isn't a decision to make lightly. Think about what you're getting into. Talk to your families if you have them. Understand the risks and the sacrifices." Marcus already knew his answer, but he appreciated that she was giving them time to consider. This was typical of Captain Mitchell. She never rushed decisions. She never pressured anyone. She presented facts and let people make informed choices. "Can I ask you something, ma'am?" Chen said quietly. "Of course, why us specifically?" "There are more experienced soldiers on this base. People who have been in special operations before." Sarah smiled. "Good question. Yes, there are more experienced soldiers. But experience isn't everything. I need people I can trust completely. People who have proven they can work together under pressure. People who aren't afraid to admit when they're wrong and then do better." She looked at each of them. "You six are those people? You started with prejudice and doubt, but you overcame it. That takes character. That takes humility. Those qualities matter more than experience." After they left her office, the 6 soldiers stood in the hallway, processing what had just happened. "So, are we doing this?" Derek asked. "I'm in," Marcus said immediately. "No question," same Tony added. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime." James nodded slowly. "My wife isn't going to be thrilled about me taking on more dangerous missions, but yeah, I'm in too." Chen was grinning. "I'm absolutely in. This is what I joined the military for." They all looked at Derek, who was the only one who hadn't committed yet. He ran his hand through his hair, conflicted. "I have a daughter. She's 8. If something happens to me on one of these missions, she grows up without a father." No one tried to convince him. They understood. This was a deeply personal decision. "Talk to your family," Marcus suggested. "See what they think. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." Over the next 2 days, each soldier wrestled with the decision in their own way. Marcus called his mother, who was proud but worried. Tony talked to his girlfriend, who asked him not to go, but ultimately supported his choice. James had a long conversation with his wife, who cried, but told him she knew this was what he needed to do. Chun's family was halfway around the world, but he video called them, and they gave him their blessing. Derek struggled the most. He sat with his daughter one evening, watching her do homework. She was smart, curious, full of life. How could he voluntarily put himself in more danger when she needed him? But then he thought about why he had joined the military in the first place. He wanted to make the world safer. He wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. And this new unit would do exactly that on a larger scale. If he said no, someone else would take his place, someone who might not be as prepared or as capable. And wasn't his daughter worth fighting for? Wasn't everyone's daughter worth fighting for? He made his decision. 48 hours later, all 6 soldiers stood in Captain Mitchell's office again. This time, there was no hesitation in their posture, no doubt in their eyes. "We're all in, ma'am," Marcus said, speaking for the group. "All 6 of us," Sarah nodded, showing a rare moment of emotion, a flash of genuine satisfaction. "Good. I expected nothing less from you. Training starts in 2 weeks. Use this time to get your affairs in order, spend time with your families, and rest. Once we start, there won't be much time for rest." "We understand, ma'am," they replied in unison. "One more thing," Sarah added. "From now on, when we're in the field or in training, you can call me Mitchell or Captain. The excessive formality isn't necessary within the team. We need to function as a unit, not a hierarchy. Respect is still expected, but we're going to be in situations where quick communication matters more than protocol." This was a significant statement. Military culture valued formality and rank structure, but special operations units often operated differently, emphasizing teamwork and trust over rigid hierarchy. "Understood, Captain," Marcus said. 2 weeks passed quickly. During that time, Marcus found himself reflecting on the entire journey. He thought about the man he had been 6 months ago, full of arrogance and prejudice. He had been so certain that a woman couldn't lead him, so convinced that gender determined capability. Now he knew better. She had taught him about leadership, about character, and about his own capacity for growth and change. She had forced him to confront his biases, not through lectures or arguments, but through her consistent, undeniable competence. The first day of special operations training arrived. The 6 core members assembled at a separate facility away from the main base. This was a place designed for elite training, with advanced equipment and obstacle courses that looked genuinely terrifying. Captain Mitchell stood before them in combat fatigues, her expression serious. "Welcome to the beginning of the rest of your military careers. What you've done before was preparation. This is the real thing. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to push you beyond what you think are your limits. Some days you'll want to quit. You'll question why you volunteered for this. But if you make it through, you'll be part of something extraordinary." She gestured to the facility around them. "This training program has a 40% failure rate. Not everyone who starts will finish. But I believe in each of you, or you wouldn't be here. Now, let's see what you're made of." The training was everything she promised, and more. They learned advanced combat techniques, complex infiltration methods, and specialized skills like demolitions and tactical medicine. They practiced hostage rescue scenarios in mock buildings filled with smoke and simulated gunfire. They learned to operate in extreme environments, from freezing cold to desert heat. But the most important training was in trust and teamwork. Captain Mitchell designed exercises that required absolute coordination. One mistake by any team member could mean failure for everyone. They learned to communicate without words, to anticipate each other's movements, to trust their lives to one another. During week 5, they faced their most difficult challenge yet. A 72-hour field exercise with minimal sleep, limited food, and objectives that kept changing. They had to navigate hostile terrain, evade mock enemy forces, complete sabotage missions, and extract a pretend hostage, all while exhausted and under constant pressure. By hour 60, everyone was running on fumes. Marcus's legs felt like concrete. Derek's hands were shaking from fatigue. Even Chen, who usually had boundless energy, was moving slowly. They gathered in a hidden position to plan their final objective, reaching the extraction point 5 miles away while avoiding enemy patrols. Captain Mitchell looked at each of them, seeing their exhaustion. "I know you're tired," she said quietly. "I'm tired too. But we're almost done. 5 more miles. One last push. Can you do it?" James spoke up, his voice hoarse. "We can do it. We've come too far to fail now." They helped each other up, checked their gear, and started moving. It was slow, painful progress. But they moved together, supporting each other, refusing to leave anyone behind. When Derek stumbled over a root, Marcus caught him. When Tony's leg cramped up, Chen helped him stretch it out. When James started lagging, everyone slowed their pace to match his. They reached the extraction point with 15 minutes to spare. As they collapsed on the ground waiting for the helicopter, Captain Mitchell sat down among them, equally exhausted. "You did well," she said. "Not just physically, but as a team. That's what this is all about. Individual skill matters, but teamwork is what keeps you alive." The 8 weeks of training culminated in a final evaluation, a complex mission scenario that tested everything they had learned. They passed all 6 of them, becoming officially part of the Special Operations Unit. At the graduation ceremony, a small affair attended only by command staff, Colonel Peters presented each of them with their new unit designation and insignia. When he got to Marcus, he paused. "Thompson, your instructors tell me you've shown remarkable leadership during training. You've come a long way from where you started." "Thank you, sir," Marcus replied. He glanced at Captain Mitchell, who stood to the side. She gave him a slight nod of acknowledgement. After the ceremony, the team celebrated at a local restaurant. It was the first time they had all been together in a relaxed setting without training or missions looming over them. They laughed, shared stories, and talked about their families. Derek showed them pictures of his daughter. "She made me a card that says, 'Daddy is my hero.' I carry it with me everywhere now." "That's because you are a hero," Tony said. "To all of us, not just her." The conversation eventually turned to their journey, how far they had come as individuals and as a team. "Remember that first day?" James said with a chuckle. When Mitchell walked into that briefing room, the look on your faces was priceless. Marcus laughed, though it was tinged with embarrassment. "I was such an idiot. We all were. Not idiots, Captain, Mitchell interjected. She had been listening quietly. You were products of your environment and your experiences. What matters is that you grew beyond that. You challenged your own assumptions. That takes courage. You gave us a chance when you didn't have to, Derek said. You could have reported what we said, had us disciplined or transferred. Instead, you just did your job and let your actions speak for themselves. Sarah shook her head. Punishing you would have been easy, but it wouldn't have changed anything. They change because they see a better way and choose it themselves. I just showed you a different perspective. Chen raised his glass. To Captain Mitchell, the best commander any of us will ever serve under. To Mitchell, they all echoed, glasses raised. Sarah smiled, genuinely touched. To the team, because that's what we are now, not commander and soldiers. A team, months turned into years. The Special Operations Unit completed dozens of successful missions. They rescued hostages from terrorist compounds, disrupted weapon smuggling operations, and gathered intelligence that prevented attacks. Their reputation grew within the intelligence community as one of the most effective units in operation. Marcus eventually earned his own promotion to lieutenant and was given command of a training unit. His first action was to implement many of the methods Captain Mitchell had taught him. When new recruits arrived, he made sure to judge them by their capabilities, not their background or appearance. One day, a female recruit arrived for training. Some of the veteran soldiers made comments, questioning whether she belonged. Marcus overheard them and called them into his office. Let me tell you a story, he began, and then he told them about Captain Mitchell, about his prejudice, his assumptions, and how completely wrong he had been. She became the best commander I ever served under, not despite being a woman, but because she was an exceptional soldier who happened to be a woman. He looked at each soldier sternly. That recruit will be judged by her performance, nothing else. If she can do the job, she earns respect. If she can't, she'll wash out like anyone else. But she gets a fair chance. Everyone gets a fair chance. That's what leadership means. Understood? Yes, sir, they responded, properly chastened. Years later, Marcus received a letter from Captain Mitchell, who had been promoted to major and was now commanding an even larger Special Operations Division. The letter was simple, but meaningful. Thompson, I heard about the training program you've implemented and the culture you're building. I'm proud of the leader you've become. You took the lessons you learned and multiplied them, passing them on to others. That's how we create lasting change. Keep up the excellent work. The military is better because of officers like you. Mitchell. Marcus folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to his daughter's drawings and other important mementos. It was a reminder of his journey from prejudice to understanding, from arrogance to humility, from being a good soldier to becoming a good leader. The locker room where it all began was still there, unchanged. But the men who had sat in it that day, laughing and making assumptions, were completely different. They had learned that strength comes in many forms, that leadership transcends gender, and that the greatest obstacle to growth is often our own refusal to see beyond our preconceptions. Captain Sarah Mitchell had taught them all of this, not through lectures or arguments, but through excellence, consistency, and unwavering professionalism. She had appeared when they least expected it, challenged everything they thought they knew. And somewhere, in another training facility, another group of soldiers was probably making similar assumptions about their new commander. But if they were lucky, they too would learn what Marcus and his team had learned, that real leadership demands respect. It doesn't ask for it based on assumptions or prejudice. It earns it through action, competence, and character. The laughter in that locker room had long since faded, replaced by respect, admiration, and gratitude. They had started as skeptics and had become believers, not in some abstract ideal, but in the concrete reality that excellence has no gender, courage has no gender, and leadership has no gender. It was a lesson they would carry with them for the rest of their lives, and one they would pass on to everyone they had the privilege to lead.